Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, July 10th, 2023 Maplewood City Council meeting. We have a very large crowd here today. It's great to see people coming and participating in local city government. I wanted to start off the meeting tonight thanking our staff, Audra Robbins and Neil Brenneman, and I'm trying to think of all the people that I saw out at Light It Up. Huge, successful event for the 4th of July. There were food trucks, and there were bouncy houses, and there were our police and fire paramedics were there, welcoming the crowd, talking with people, passing out little badges. I was there with my family. It was a really fun event, but we couldn't have done it without our staff. They did such a fabulous job. And the weather, everyone kept their fingers crossed. The weather held out. We didn't have rain, so we were able to go forward with the fireworks. And the fireworks, I had so many people tell me that Maplewood does some of the best fireworks ever. And I agree with them. So it was really a very fun event. I want to make sure that I thank all the staff that were there and made that such a great event. And the band was really pretty good, too. It was a new band. I'm trying to Schizoid something, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the band, but it was a different band than we've had in the past, and that was really a fun event too. I know my grandchildren loved that. So thank you, staff, for putting together a wonderful summer event, and the weather held out. And I think the weather's going to hold out tonight too. I don't think we're going to have a storm. So with that, everyone, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Evans, would you please do the roll call for us?
Councilmember Cave?
Here.
Councilmember Juniman?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Present.
Councilmember Villavicencio?
Here.
And Mayor Abrams?
I'm here as well, thank you. Council members, is there a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Juniman. The motion to...
No, seconded by Cave.
Oh, Cave, I'm sorry. Moved by Lee, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Cave.
On council presentations, water restrictions.
Okay. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Parks and Recs Month.
Okay. Okay, seeing no more lights, then let's vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Council members, we're moving on to the approval of our minutes, the June 26th, 2023 City Council Workshop Meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the June 26, 2023 City Council Workshop Meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention. Thank you for that. Moving on to the June 26 City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the June 26, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
And one abstention. Thank you very much. Moving on to appointments and presentations. City Manager Coleman, this is your topic.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the City Council. The council calendar is to give you a preview of our upcoming agenda items and work session schedule. In your report, we have July 24th, we have a to be determined in terms of a workshop. And I would like to suggest that we talk about the cannabis legislation. City Attorney Beatty has put together a really nice lengthy synopsis of the legislation, and I think that we need to present that to you and get some guidance about, we have a moratorium that's expiring. There's a suggestion that we adopt a new moratorium for the new legislation. And so I'd like to have Ron go through that with you on the 24th, if that's okay.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you. And then in terms of August 14th, we'll do the first kind of broad overview of the 2024 budget. And we'll have the Met Council employees out to talk about the Purple Line discussion on transit station locations. On August 28th, that will be the more detailed 2024 budget review with the council. And we're also scheduling a community listening session that will be at approximately 6:30 that evening to get input from the public or residents on the 2024 budget. In addition to that, I'm happy to hear about any issues or other concerns that you may have for our staff to either work on or to bring back for your consideration.
Thank you. City Manager Coleman, I wanted to add something that I have noticed, and it's all the dead trees. This is something that, it reminds me of that movie about I See Dead People. Okay, I am driving around the city, and what I see are dead trees. Now, Councilmember Juniman and I were both on the council when the state arborist was here. That was a few years back. And I remember then they were telling us that within 10 to 15 years, every ash tree in Maplewood will be gone. Well, in the entire metro area, because of the deadly emerald ash borer. And they indicated, and I still remember their presentation, they indicated that it'll start off a tree here, a dead tree there, and then it will grow, and pretty soon it will be exponential. Well, it is now exponential. And I know during Light It Up, Carol Gertis, our naturalist, was at the event, and was passing out emerald ash temporary tattoos, and I got one on my hand. And it was pretty hard to take off, I'm telling you that much. But I did get the emerald ash borer tattoos for all of you, and I will bring them to our next meeting so that you can have some fun with that too. It's a pretty ugly borer that is killing our trees. But there are some things going on. I know that being out in the community, I've been asked by a number of people about what are we doing with the ash trees, and certainly the city is responsible. Just at Wakefield alone, there were 40 ash trees that were taken down because they were infested with the ash borer. And then they're going to be replanting from the tree trust, where we were able to secure a number of trees and replanting there. So that's really good. But the city's responsible for any of the trees that are on city property, on our parks and the city campus and such, and also boulevard trees. But there are a lot of ash trees that are on people's private property. And we did hear from our state representative, from Peter Fisher, that the legislature had approved funding some grants that are going to be, I think, dispersed through cities. We don't have any more information on it yet because there were so many things that the legislature did. Mm-hmm. But what I would like to suggest is that we put emerald ash borer on a workshop, and that we talk about what is our plan and what can we do. I know during the tree sale that we just did in May, we doubled the number of trees that we offered. The previous year it was 150. This year it was 300 trees, where the city pays for part of the tree and then the residents pay for the other half of the tree. And they're all trees that are hardy and resistant to a lot of kinds of insects and things like that. So I think what we need to do, though, because now I'm going to ask all my council members, when you leave tonight, look around and see the dead trees. There are so many. It's very disheartening. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to talk about it. I'd like to see it on a workshop, and then it's also something that we already have something in the budget for that. This is our budget discussion time, so we might as well throw that in as well. Council members, what are your thoughts about bringing that back as a workshop? Let's start with you, Councilmember Cave.
No, I think it's a great idea, and find out where the grants are, mm-hmm. what stage we're at with those.
What's the process? We don't know that yet, but we certainly want to get that information communicated to our residents, because if you do have an ash tree on your private property, if there's a state grant that can help with that, that certainly would be good. Councilmember Juniman, are you
Absolutely.
okay?
Yes.
Heads nodding. Councilmember Lee, okay, good. So let's add that, and we'll put that on as a workshop and come up with a plan on getting all this information together on the ash trees. So, okay, Councilmember Lee, you have a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. And in light of that conversation this year, my ash tree finally gave out. I was hoping that I was going to keep up, but after 6 years, it's gone. So I actually have a new topic I wanted to add to. Wonder if the council would be interested in looking into, in light of one of the issue that we'll be voting on tonight. City Ordinance 44-12, Section I, Paragraph 1, in reference to separate ownership from abutting lands. I think it's an old provision in our city, and I'm wondering if the council would be interested in looking at that. It doesn't make any sense at all to me that you can't own two abutting property. So I'm just curious to see if the council would be interested in looking at revisiting it, and part of that process is just updating some of our policy and just to see if it's up to code.
City Manager Coleman, do you have any thoughts about that? That's something I think that Mr. Beatty can help us with.
Yeah, well, Mr. Beatty can, or any of us can change or repeal the ordinance. It's just a process that we go through. A public hearing, I think, is needed. It is a very old provision in our zoning code. It was here when I started in 1995, and it didn't make sense then, and it certainly doesn't make any sense now, but we don't know how it started. There was probably a specific incident or something that it got written
Sure.
to try to take care of that situation. But this is the first time it's come into play where it's kind of, this doesn't make any sense. We never had really paid much attention to that provision. So that's up to you. If you'd want to have a discussion on it, Mr. Beatty or myself can put together a report on that.
Mr. Beatty.
Mayor and council, I won't go into a lot of detail, but it's actually a fairly common provision in other cities. And there is a statutory analog dealing with lakefront lots. What it's really intended to do is to prevent a situation in which small lots are platted years ago, ordinances change, and then the idea is to make people who own adjacent lots combine them to create lots that meet current code. So there is a logic to it, but if we want to explore that, that's perfectly okay. Just want to give you a little background.
Yeah. I certainly think that it's worth a discussion, and maybe Mr. Beatty can help us put something together, and we can have a discussion about it. Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. Based on what Mr. Beatty said, we do need to be careful, though, because we might be creating something that down the line we're saying, why the world did we do that?
Right.
So we
That's
probably
what we
need to
need to talk about.
weigh both sides of it.
Look at how many lake lots we have where that situation might happen. So I was not aware of that. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. We're done with our council calendar update, council presentations. We have water restrictions.
Yes, while I sit on the St. Paul Regional Water Board, they have not imposed a restriction yet. We have a meeting tomorrow for the state of Minnesota. They've been watching it very closely this year about putting a restriction on water usage. So keep our eyes out for it tomorrow, and I'll get back to you and let you know if anything comes tomorrow in the coming weeks. If it does go out, we do send our Maplewood. We go on our website and let everybody know if such a restriction is in place. But right now, it's just on the severe watch for restrictions.
Thank you for that update. And Councilmember Villavicencio, Parks and Rec.
Yes, thank you. Well, it's short and simple. I just want to acknowledge the Parks and Recs department because July is Parks and Recs month. And I also agree with the mayor. I thought the Light It Up Maplewood event was fabulous, and it seemed like everybody had a pretty good time, and everybody was fairly peaceful. And I talked to people that were there from all over the Twin Cities. And I thought that was really fun to just see the range of people that came all the way to Maplewood. So thanks for everybody who come, and thanks for all the fire, the police, and the Parks Department for doing a great job on that event.
Thank you for that. Okay, moving on to our consent agenda. We have several items on there. Is there a motion?
I motion consent agenda items G1 through 1 and 2.
Second.
Is there a second? Moved by Cave, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve the consent agenda items G1 and 2, which includes A, B, and C. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda passes. We have no public hearings tonight, no unfinished business. We do have some new business tonight. Ms. Parr, it looks like you're going to be introducing some things.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We actually, I think the first one's yours. Elizabeth. I am going to be teaming up here with Elizabeth to handle a few of these tonight. So we'll start with Elizabeth, if you want to jump right in on the family place.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. The first item tonight is the variance for 1759 Phelan Place. The applicant is Jody Andrews, property owner. She's proposing to remove an existing home at 1759 Phelan Place and rebuild a new single dwelling on the property. The site is 0.09 acres in size, and she's requesting approval for a lot size and setback variance. The site is guided for low-density residential. The land use supports densities of 2.6 to 6 units per acre in this category, allowing for attached, detached, single-family homes, detached townhomes, and two-family homes. So the proposal meets the intent of the comprehensive plan. The property is zoned single-dwelling residential. It's a permitted use. And the property size is non-conforming to the current lot size ordinance standards. The parcel is 4,783 square feet. The city's ordinance for single-dwelling residential properties requires a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet and a minimum width of 75 feet at the building setback line, and then 100 feet of street frontage for corner lots on both street frontages. The property was originally platted to be this size, so it's considered a legal nonconforming or substandard lot that can be used for a single residential dwelling. However, there's a provision in our nonconforming ordinance section that was referenced earlier related to the ownership of the lot and the adjacent lot. And so the applicant is required to obtain a variance for the lot size standards due to that provision. And that is the provision that was brought up earlier, section 44-12I. The city allows construction on non-conforming lots that do not meet the size, width, frontage, or depth requirements if the lot meets the following requirements. And if you read through these, the first one there is, since becoming substandard, the lots have always been in separate ownership from abutting lands. So that is why the property owner is making the request for the lot size standard variance. So the applicant purchased the property with the intent to build a residential home on the property and presently owns the property directly west at 1769 East Shore Drive. The applicant was unaware of the ordinance provision on separate ownership from abutting lands. And again, that's why the request is made this evening. In addition to the lot size, the property owner is requesting a rear yard setback variance. The proposed placement of the new home requires a variance well, the way our rear yard setback is determined, it's 20% of the lot depth. There are two differing lot depths in this case. The average is 13.5 feet, so that would be the required rear yard setback is 13.5. A small portion, if you look at the survey, I'll have that up in a moment, of the home on the northwest corner encroaches into that setback at 9.2 feet is what she's proposing. So required is 13.5, proposing 19.2. Here's the existing conditions on the left and proposed conditions on the right. You can see that the placement of the home is fairly similar. It's shifting and the angle is turning a little bit. The driveway is moving south. Right now it's very close to the street intersection and on the north side of the home, or I'm sorry, on the northeast corner. Now it's moving to the southeast. And you can see those proposed setbacks as well. In addition, worth mentioning and just having the discussion, this isn't a formal request for you. Our ordinance has what we call a reduced front yard setback authorization, and I'll run through that with you as well. So the minimum front yard setback requirement is 30 feet or in line with the predominant setback for that street. This property is a corner lot, so it's considered to have 2 front yard setback requirements. And so the code allows staff to review and administratively approve a different setback if it meets any of these requirements that are outlined in our ordinance. And in this case, it would not affect the privacy adjacent homes or would save significant natural features. It's necessary to meet city, state, or federal regulations or for energy saving, health, or safety reasons. It's I shouldn't say very common, but it does happen. We review these requests administratively. They don't come before you. It's at the time of a building permit. Just bringing it up in case there's a question of the front yard setback that's being proposed. So on the east side lot line, it's proposed to be 12.5 feet at the closest point. Again, the home is kind of angled. It's not exactly parallel. And so that front yard setback on the north lot line would be 14.7 at the nearest point. Presently, the setback on the east lot line is 6 feet, and on the north lot line, it's 14.4. So it would certainly be increasing on the north lot line, and it's fairly close to what it is on the east. Excuse me, on the north. So, in addition, mentioned this before, moving the garage and the driveway to the south end of the home, farther away from the street intersection. Currently, it's 6 feet setback. This improves the visibility along Phelan Place and Sophia Avenue roadways. Overall, in our staff review, we're comfortable with this proposed positioning of the home. Setback distances are increased, and it meets the intent and conditions of that section. So, again, lot size and rear yard setback variance requests are for you to consider this evening. Statute allows variances to be approved when the proposal is in harmony with the goals and policies in the comp plan and our official controls, our ordinance, and when practical difficulties exist. The practical difficulty standards outlines 3 factors to consider: reasonableness, uniqueness, and essential character. In our review, we find that the application meets those requests, and I will go through each of those practical difficulty standards with you here briefly. So reasonableness, when the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, not permitted by the zoning ordinance. The owner's request, we feel, is reasonable given that provision in the city's nonconforming ordinance section and the existing size of that property. The owner could, hypothetically sell the lot, or a new owner could build on that lot without that requirement for the lot size variance. The rear yard setback variance, 4 feet, seems reasonable considering that existing size of the lot and the angles. The uniqueness, when the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances that are unique to the property and not created by the landowner. The existing circumstances are unique to the property owner. The lots of this size are rare in Maplewood, and given that the lot was originally platted to be this size, these are unique circumstances. When the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character. Again, I think replacing the existing residential structure on the property, it's guided for residential development and zoned. It would be used for the same purposes, residential dwelling, and it would keep that neighborhood's character the same. We sent notices to property owners within 500 feet. There were 2 phone calls received, 1 call from a neighbor with questions about the proposal. This caller generally expressed that they were not in favor of the request, and 1 voicemail from a neighbor. This caller voiced support. 1 written comment, and that was provided in your report. There were 3 residents that spoke at the public hearing at the Planning Commission. 1 resident stated concerns with the proposal, and 2 spoke in favor of the proposal. The Planning Commission held that public hearing on June 20th and recommended approval. This is before you tonight. There are some environmental review requirements that are included in that resolution. And with that, staff is recommending approval. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know the applicant is here as well.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. Council members, are there any questions? Any questions? Would the applicant like to address the council?
For this opportunity. So, in the journey of this.
Can you use the microphone, pull it down a little bit towards you?
I'm so sorry.
There
Is
you
that
go.
better?
That's much better.
Okay, great. So in this journey, we've done our best to try and engage our neighbors. We sent out 20 invites, inviting people to come to our home, as well as what the city sent out within 500 feet of our address. And 3 couples came, 2 phone calls, and 2 residents from separate households. 5 were in favor, 2 were not. So that was the summary of that. And, I'm so sorry, I should have introduced myself, I apologize.
Thank you.
So, my name is Jody Andrews, my address is 1768 East Shore Drive, co-owner of the property with Burton Beavers, my partner. And then, first, hope it's okay that I acknowledge Elizabeth Hammond. She has been so supportive in helping me understand the uniqueness that this property has and so forth. I was quite surprised in that situation, so I just want to give Elizabeth many thanks with all my plethora of questions. And I also want to thank you for this opportunity to speak with you this evening regarding the property at 1759 Dan Place. It's a tiny lot with a big heart. That's all I have to say. The prior owner was Kitty Anderson. She was a pillar in the East Side community. They owned the Anderson Bible bookstore on the East Side. She was a great neighbor, her and her son. It was a duplex, 2-story. It was sad when Kitty passed, but that's when the property went up for sale, and it was in foreclosure, so we just had to put a bid in, and it had to be a good bid, because the bank doesn't care. They just want funding, right? So luckily, we were able to get that property. The reason that property was important to us is the home at 1768 East Shore Drive has been and always will be for a relative. That property was purchased for my brother, who is disabled, and when he's ready to retire, that's where we want him to retire. We grew up there. When he was rehabilitating from his accident, learning how to walk again, that's the lake we walked around with him. So this house on East Shore Drive was always meant for him. We're just hanging out until he's ready to retire. So when the home behind us came up, we're like, oh my goodness, what a great opportunity to be near my brother as he ages and where he might need support and help. So we unknowing to us that we couldn't own 2 adjoining properties and the uniqueness and quirkiness of the shape of the lot and so forth, this was just a lot of unknowns for us, that we were just working with the passion of wanting to be near my brother when he's ready to move. So, so size, one of the smallest lot, shape, not typical. It's a rectangular trapezoid kind of shape. But in working with some individuals, we have done our level best to put a home in there that is modest, but is still in character with the neighborhood, still allows for a great opportunity for a view to the lake over the west side of the lot. And we're really excited for this opportunity if that comes to fruition. We are kindly seeking, Burton and I are kindly seeking a lot variance for the actual lot size, as Elizabeth outlined, and then a small portion of the lot or of the home is encroaching out a little bit on the west corner. So the reasonableness, 79 Phelan Place lot is quite unique, a bit quirky. It's kind of, as I mentioned earlier, it's shaped like a trapezoid and one of the smallest lots in Maplewood, coupled with being on a corner lot with increased setbacks. I mean, what else could you toss in here, you know? It's quite unique. So what we've tried to do is keep within the character of the neighborhood. We're not putting a 2-story up there like there is now. We wanted it to be very modest and very befitting of that size and the area it has. And then, as Elizabeth mentioned, safety comes first. The driveway right now is like right on the corner, so it's not safe. So moving the driveway farther away is the best route from a safety concern. And simplifying life, we're proposing a modest 920 square foot home, open living room, floor plan, 1 bedroom, an office, and there was a debate about a basement. I was thinking that a basement was higher cost than a slab. Well, I was educated by a builder that no, basements are cheaper than a slab, and one of the neighbors mentioned during one of the neighbor meetings, why would I not want a basement in Minnesota? For many reasons. So with that encouragement from both those individuals, we're going in with a basement. And sorry, I'm a little nervous. This is kind of, important for us. So, we're looking, good news, there's positive change. There's less impervious surface, a small less impervious, but every little bit helps, I hope, 1.6%. And then from the earlier discussion regarding trees, due to the placement, moving of the driveway, we need to displace 2 trees, a willow tree and another tree. And so I've been in, email communication with Sean Finwall regarding tree replacement, and will we also be, partnering with her on other areas that she has expertise. Water runoff is a real concern for the neighbor that's abutting that property. We want to be very respectful of that. There's already a rain garden in one area, so we'll probably put in other rain gardens. We'll probably jet the gutters away from their property towards Sophia, so that's where most of the drainage goes, and that's where we could do more rain gardens. So we want to be very cognizant of their concern. Right now, there isn't any runoff to my knowledge, so hopefully that will be the same with our proposal.
Can I ask a question of Ms. Hammond? I know that the report that we were provided and that we all relied on for tonight talked about not having a basement. Does a basement change anything from what we are looking at tonight?
Mayor, members of the council, good question, but it would not change anything in regards to what we're considering, the lot size and the footprint being that rear yard setback.
Okay, thank you. Council members, any questions for Ms. Hammond or for Ms. Andrews? Council member Cave.
Just comments. I think you did a wonderful job. Really hats off to wanting to stay next to your brother too, but turning this property, the house that you are looking at building, modest, but it's beautiful. It really does go with the neighborhood, and you've turned that lot, by moving the house around a little bit. I think you've really utilized as much as you could with that lot, and I think you did a great job putting that together. So,
thank you, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Just the question about the basement piece of it, that should not impact the water, the runoff, or anything at all then, right? Having that basement in there?
Mayor, members of the council, as part of the building permit process, they'll be required to submit a grading plan. Our engineering department will review that as well. And again, she'll be working with the environmental planner to implement some mitigation strategies, such as the stormwater ponding. If anything, this process, if there are issues with runoff, will likely improve any runoff problems that are present.
Okay, thank you for that. I drove by the property recently too, and I think this will be a great addition to the neighborhood, so.
Council members, there aren't any other questions. Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve a lot size and setback variance resolution for the property located at 1759 Phelan Place, subject to certain conditions of approval.
Second.
Moved by Villavicencio, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve a lot size and setback variance resolution for the property located at 1759 Phelan Place, subject to certain conditions of approval. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes.
Is it approved?
Thank you.
Yep.
Council members, moving on to our next agenda item, we have M Health Fairview St. John's Hospital. Ms. Hammond, looks like you're the presenter on this as well.
Yes, I'll be taking this one as well. So M Health Fairview is proposing a 7,000 square foot addition to the existing St. John's Hospital campus. It is for a 16-bed medical observation unit to provide immediate patient care capacity due to increased patient volumes. The site is 28 acres in size, and they're requesting approval for a conditional use permit amendment and design review. The site is guided for employment uses, so emphasis on job retention and creation, near frequent and reliable transit. The land use supports manufacturing, industrial areas, higher intensity office, clinical, and business uses, and the proposal meets this intent. The site is zoned business commercial. Existing use and proposed use are permitted. There is a conditional use permit in place for the hospital, and so an amendment is required for that expansion or any site change that occurs. And so this amendment will include those proposed project details to that permit. The 7,000 square foot single level building addition is located within the interior of the site. The addition is not directly attached to the adjoining building foundation, but will have an enclosed at-grade connection. All setbacks are achieved. The existing site access will remain from the current parking lot to the east and the adjacent southwest building. The campus has 1,252 parking spaces, and they're required to maintain that parking count as part of their existing CUP. The parking capacity on the property will remain the same for this project, other than maybe temporary disturbance during this project. So this overview here shows the darker shaded gray area is where the new building would be, kind of in the shape of a T. And you can see where it's connecting at the base of that T. That's where it will connect to that other building there. Site renderings here meant to illustrate how it will look on the site. The proposed building is that lower one-level building adjacent to the hospital there. Building will be constructed with high-quality, attractive building materials. Overall, we feel it will complement the existing building and site layout. Proposing cedar architectural wall panels with staggered seams in a vintage wood espresso color. This is more for the design review, maybe. Black aluminum insulated window frames. Building, again, one level, 12.8 feet in height. Elevation, perspectives. There is a fence screening panel that will cover a 365 square foot mechanical system yard that's on the south side of the building. The way that it's screened, it will be 10-foot tall cedar wood slats, and they're fastened to steel posts alternating so that they're still able to provide airflow to that mechanical system, but effectively 100% opaque. So screening is
Ms.
achieved.
Hammond, I see that Councilmember Cave has a question for you.
Oh, sure.
Hi. Question about the fact that it's a one-story. I know at the front of the building where they just did an addition onto it and they went from a one-story to, they added two onto it. Mm-hmm. Is this one-story structure going to be strong enough so in the future if they decide to go up higher, that's the capability is there like it was in the front?
Mayor, Council, that is a great question. I cannot answer that question. I know there are representatives here that can maybe speak to that more.
Okay.
My guess is the way that this is proposed to be constructed, it's going to be made off-site and brought on. I don't believe there's any plan at this time to add up to the 7,000 square foot building. But again, I'll maybe defer that question to them if that's something they've thought of.
We'll ask the applicant to come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question, thanks.
So in addition to that, they submitted a landscaping plan with some tree removal and replacement. They will have to update those plans though, either adding additional trees or paying into the city's tree fund. So they'll be working with our environmental team on that. We surveyed the surrounding properties and sent a notice to folks within 500 feet. There were no comments received. And at the meeting, there were no one from the public that spoke on this item. So there are some engineering requirements and environmental requirements in the report that was included in your council report. The CDRB reviewed this and the Planning Commission reviewed this both on June 20th and recommended approval. This is before you this evening. Staff is recommending approval And the proposed motions are here before you, and happy to answer questions. And again, I know we have a few folks from the applicants team here.
Council members, do you have any questions for Ms. Hammond? Councilmember Juniman.
I bet you know what it's about. The tree replacement issue, there are 11 trees short. Are they aware of what this is going to mean?
I mean, I guess that's a question, Mayor, members of the council. There is the environmental planner and the city's natural resources coordinator have prepared a report kind of detailing exactly what is required for that replacement. And given the options, provided the options to them of what they can do, either replacing those trees or paying into the city's tree fund. So before any work can begin, they'll have to update their plan, achieve those requirements, and we'll be making sure that they do.
Thank you.
Is there someone from St. John's that would like to address us? Welcome, hello.
Hello.
Can you introduce yourselves, please?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Danielle Gethke. I am the Vice President of Hospital Operations for M Health Fairview St. John's Hospital.
Mayor, council members, Kyle Weissman, architect with HGA here in Minneapolis.
Is there anything that you would like to add to the report?
No, we look forward to, as always, partnering with the City of Maplewood. We feel that we want to be a good partner for this community. As most of people know, we have actually increased our capabilities for services at St. John's by adding that cath lab. We do open heart surgeries, and we have seen an acuity increase. We've also seen a patient influx increase, and this 16-bed observation is meant to help us cohort those patients that are there for observation and be able to take care of the community that we serve.
Councilmember Cave, your question too about the expanding?
Yes.
Structurally it could, it's not designed to because of how our mechanical system is in the, above the roof in an enclosed setting.
Okay.
So there's really no way to put another floor above the one-story building.
Okay.
So it'll always be a one-story building.
Okay.
And also at 7,000 square feet, it is not as efficient as we would want it to be if we were to go up.
Okay.
Thank you for replying to that question. I have to say, when I read the report, I was excited to see that you are making further investments into our community, because really you are our community hospital, and so I really appreciate it. I see that Councilmember Juniman has a question.
Can you answer my tree question?
Yeah, so we have been working closely with the, I forgot the.
Sean Finwald.
Sean Finwald. So we are very close to resubmitting our plans with the updated tree counts. We are clearly aware of the quantity that has to be replaced and working to achieve that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Council members, we have two motions tonight. Would someone like to make the first one?
I motion to approve a resolution for a conditional use permit approving a 7,000 square foot addition to the existing St. John's Hospital campus at 1575 Beam Avenue, subject to conditions of approval.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Lee, the motion to approve a resolution for a conditional use permit amendment approving a 7,000 square foot addition to the existing St. John's Hospital campus at 1575 Beam Avenue, subject to conditions of approval. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Councilmember Juniman abstains. The motion passes. Moving on to the second motion, would someone like to make that one?
Motion to approve a design review resolution approving a 7,000 square foot addition to the existing St. John's Hospital campus at 1575 Beam Avenue, subject to conditions of approval.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve a design review resolution approving a 7,000 square foot addition to the existing St. John's Hospital campus at 1575 Beam Avenue, subject to conditions of approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
And one abstention. Thank you. That motion carries as well. Can I ask one last question? What's your timeline for this addition?
We're going to be substantially complete by the end of the year. So as Elizabeth described.
I'm sorry, say it again?
By the end of the year, we'll be substantially complete. So we're actually building the entire project off-site in a manufacturer setting, prefabricated, and then bringing the modules to the project site and installing them. So we're going to be on site for 3 months building and then open by the end of the year.
I know I always get questions when people see things changing. So what can I tell them when you're, I understand it's going to be built off-site and then moved on to the site. When will we see changes at the site?
August.
August?
We're actually planning a groundbreaking ceremony in August. This is a huge moment for St. John's as we continue to serve this community, and so we're looking forward to that. So August, you'll start to see dirt moving, we'll call it that.
Okay.
And then the goal with this unit and the partnership with Bolt and HGA is to be able to innovate healthcare construction so that we can move it along faster and have it ready by the end of the year, which will allow us to serve our patients faster and in a better setting.
Good. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council members, moving on to Klein Nissan Additions, 3090 Maplewood Drive North. Is this you, Ms. Parr?
It is. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We'll switch it up for a minute here. I'm going to handle this one. This is Klein Nissan at 3090 Maplewood Drive North. Some of you may know that as the general intersection of County Road D Court and Highway 61. Klein Nissan is proposing 2 building additions. One is for a service area and one is for a parts department, and we'll show that in just a minute. They are requesting approval for the conditional use permit amendment and design review. Those are both required in order for this to happen. The existing car dealership is guided commercial in the orange, as you can see there. It is zoned light manufacturing, so this use is very appropriate for the location. The site currently has a CUP for its auto service and car wash functions, which is required. And so they're going to be altering that, and so thus they're asking for approval tonight. The addition of the north side of the building will be 2,016 square feet, and if you can see it there, it is the small portion that jets out with the dimensions shown on it. The remainder of the building in the center there is over 21,000 square feet, I believe, and then the lower area is the south side of the building, and that's 4,352 square feet. The south side addition will expand the parking area, bringing the curb line closer to the wetland. That is permitted because it'll still meet the 25-foot setback as allowed by a 2002 variance they received, and they are still in compliance with that. The building additions are oriented towards the rear and will be constructed with rock-faced CMU blocks and painted to match the existing building. And there are no changes proposed to the front elevations of the building. What you see when you drive by is what you will continue to see going forward. As far as the public comment, we sent a public hearing notice to all properties within 500 feet. We had no speakers attend the Planning Commission public hearing. We had one email comment that was received from an adjacent business owner stating some concerns in regards to parking on the public street on the north side of the site. There was some discussion about that at the Planning Commission, not an extensive amount, but they did not share those concerns and they did not put additional conditions on as was offered by staff at that time. The Planning Commission reviewed and did not feel it was warranted and thus moved forward with their action on the conditional use permit. The CDRB and the Planning Commission, June 20th, they reviewed it, both recommended approval, and staff recommends approval as well. The applicant is in the audience if you have any questions of them as well. And if you have any, I'm happy to take them at this time.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Parr? Then would the applicant like to step forward and contribute anything to our discussion? Good evening and welcome.
Thank you.
Please indicate your name.
Pam Guilford.
Okay.
Were there any questions?
And you are with?
With Klein.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm
Oh,
Jeff
sorry.
Kratkin. I'm president of RJ Ryan Construction, the general contractor.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to add to the presentation?
I don't think so. They did a good job.
Yeah.
Okay.
excited.
Councilmember Cave has a question.
I just have a question with that property who has concerns in front of his property with the employee parking. You know, we want everyone to get along here in Maplewood, and we want to make sure that, you know, I know the Planning Commission didn't need to address anything with what you guys are looking for, but I just want to make sure that we're working together with our partners, you know, and our, you know, that you're sharing, you know, a street, that we're not blocking their property, you know.
It's not.
Okay.
It's open. It's very wide.
Okay.
He's actually never contacted us
Okay.
with a concern.
Okay.
So, and I have been kind of watching it since then.
Yeah.
And just this morning, NSP had 5 big
Yeah.
trucks going down there, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
thank
it's
you.
pretty wide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. In the environmental review, I presume you are familiar with it, it says the development must comply with the wetland buffer variance conditions imposed by the city in 2002. So I want to make sure everybody's on board with knowing that and what it means. And have you been working with our environmental planner, or is that how you're going to handle it?
We have, and actually, as part of their recommendation, is we did have the wetland redelineated this year to update that, and just had a revision to our plan to ensure that it was still in compliance.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, my question, I had some concerns around the parking issue too, but not more so on the street, but more with the lot itself. So I had a conversation with Ned, and I was curious if you can share with the council the parking agreement that we chatted a little bit about earlier, just so the council knows that if there are any questions that do come up, that comes into play.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Lee, thank you. So part of, in looking at the parking and just kind of making sure we were understanding fully what's taken place over time, one of the things that we were able to pull out in relation to the Klein site, as part of an exchange agreement back in 2004, there was a cross-access agreement that was to be signed by the property owners, and this kind of speaks to the adjacent properties. It was the responsibility of Klein at that time to have that signed and then to have it recorded, and the street eventually could be deeded to them as a part of that. So if there are parking issues, one of the conditions that's noted in the report is in relation to that. So if there were conditions, or if there were issues that came up in relation to the parking, that could help address those in the future as well. It would give them additional land area.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any other lights on. Okay, council members, there are 2 motions. Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve a resolution for a conditional use permit amendment approving 2 building additions to be constructed at 3090 Maplewood Drive North.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Villavicencio, the motion to approve a resolution for a conditional use permit amendment approving 2 building additions to be constructed at 3090 Maplewood Drive North. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. There's another motion. Would someone like to make that?
A motion to approve a resolution for design review approving 2 building additions to be constructed at 3090 Maplewood Drive North.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Lee, the motion to approve a resolution for design review approving 2 building additions to be constructed at 3090 Maplewood Drive North. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we're moving on to design review and parking waiver resolution for the multifamily residential apartment building at 1375 Frost Avenue. And Ms. Parr, is this one yours? No, it's Ms. Hammond, I believe.
That is correct,
Ms.
thank you.
Hammond.
Me again, yes. All right. So Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative is proposing a 3-story, 40-unit apartment building on a site that is 1.23 acres in size, and this includes the former Gladstone House. The city is the current property owner. The council, as you know, entered into a purchase agreement with Beacon last year to develop housing on this site. And tonight they're requesting approval for a design review with a parking waiver, and that is why they're before you this evening. The site is guided mixed-use neighborhood, high density. The land use supports neighborhoods serving commercial, retail, or service businesses, offices, and high-density housing. Proposal meets this intent. The site is zoned mixed use. A multi-dwelling residential apartment is a permitted use. The site allows for up to 25 to 50 units per acre, and the applicant is proposing 40 units. The 1.23 acre site could have up to 61 units. The proposed 20,000 square foot building will comprise 32 bedroom, 6 3-bedroom, 4 4-bedroom dwelling units, and spaces for supportive services and common gathering. the ordinance, all the units meet our minimum size standards for bedroom units. And the site amenities include bike storage, fitness center, playground, outdoor patio, gardening space, underground parking, and a small surface lot for visitors. All the trash and recycling will be maintained in the building as well. So the site is accessed off Clarence Avenue from Frost off Clarence Avenue from Frost on the west side. On the interior north end of the site, there's a patio and that gardening playground space that was referenced. All the setbacks are achieved. Here is a site rendering showing the interior courtyard area, so this would be looking south. Exterior walls are required to be up to 40 feet in length, are allowed to be up to 40 feet in length, and they are required to be broken up into segments between 20 and 40 feet in width. And this has been discussed at the design review. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Primary materials, they do need to update their elevation renderings to outline the primary materials, secondary materials, and accent materials, because those were not called out on those elevations. So that will be part of the building permit process. The CDRB can consider exceptions to those design standards as long as they uphold the integrity of the guidelines and result in an overall attractive and cohesive development design. Proposing fiber cement siding, different colors there and orientation, and then some brick components as well. Overall is an attractive building. Again, they'll have to submit updated elevations outlining that percentage for each material. So the building is 3 stories in height, or 35 feet. The length exceeds 40 feet, as I mentioned earlier. It is articulated in shorter segments on the northwest and east walls. However, some segments still exceed that code standard of between 20 and 40 feet. We're comfortable with those exceptions along the north and west sides of the building and had that discussion with the design review board. Those segments are proposed to be between 45 and 54 feet. We are recommending that they shorten and articulate the facade along the east side of the building, specifically the section that's shown at 74 feet in width, and that's been called out in the conditions of approval. So they will need to update their elevation renderings as well, showing how that will be, how the articulation will be shortened in length. They will need to submit a revised landscape plan and tree survey plan prior to the issuance of a grading permit. There are a number of trees and landscaping proposed. However, there are some items called out by our environmental group to update on those plans. We are recommending additional bicycle parking on the site near the building entrance and the playground spaces, and as well as a little additional screening and landscaping along the west and north property line in the setback area. And this is directly west of that playground area and east of that community garden space. They all will need to submit a revised photometric plan showing that the exterior lighting on the building's north, south, or east sides meets the standard of not exceeding a foot candle over the property line. So the parking waiver, they are proposing 54 enclosed stalls that will be below grade in their garage. 6 guest surface parking stalls are provided on the west side of the building for a total of 60 stalls per site, or on the site. The parking spaces must be 9 feet wide by 18 feet, drive aisles 24 feet wide. The applicant's plans meet these requirements. The project is required to provide 80 parking stalls. Our code requires 2 parking spaces for each unit, with one of those parking spaces being enclosed. So the enclosed parking requirement is achieved. However, there is a request for 20 parking stalls as part of that waiver. The applicant states and believes that the parking will be sufficient for the number of units and the targeted resident population. They are, in addition, working on a shared parking agreement with the Philippine Center to provide an additional 21 spaces if needed. The applicant hosted an open house on May 11th for a couple hours at Wakefield Park, and they sent invitations to property owners within 700 feet.
Can I just interject here?
Yep.
I can see we have a couple of lights. And I
Okay.
think they're going to be asking the same questions that I was going to be asking because parking is a concern to us. You know, we want to make sure that we make the right decisions now. And I know they're asking for a 20 parking spot waiver. And one of the things that I had a question about is the fact that they indicated that they didn't believe that they needed 80 spots. However, there are going to be service providers that are going to be going to that location, and that's going to add additional cars. And given the fact that in Maplewood, you can't park a car on the street overnight, that's a concern to me. So can you maybe answer that? I see some heads nodding over here too about, you know, parking, and the fact 20 spots is a lot when you are having service providers coming in and going out. And I think I saw service providers are going to be there 24/7. Someone will be there.
Mayor, members of the council, ultimately, I would like to have the applicant address this because
Sure.
I know that at our planning commission meeting and CDRB meeting, they were able to, or CDRB meeting, excuse me, they were able to pull or draw upon some other, you know, previous projects that they've worked on that are very similar, and what's worked for them. I know that as far as their reasoning and what the discussions we've had, it's based on the folks that are going to be living in this particular building. They don't believe that they will necessarily have multiple vehicles or need to have two parking stalls per unit, and that they usually are, I believe, if I'm correct, just over one per unit is kind of what they average. That's what they see typically. And so that's why they're making their request. In addition to that, with the location, you know, I don't know if all of their service team employees would be there 24/7. Again, that would be a question for them. I don't know all the operations there, but
I'll ask the applicant to come up when you're done with your presentation. Council members, Cave, is there anything else about parking that you wanted to ask?
Yes, another question on that is the agreement with the Philippine Center. Now, while that's desire to have one, is there one in place?
Mayor, members of the council, I do not know if that has been finalized. I know that they've had conversations with them. I don't know what has progressed since our last meeting on June 20th.
We can ask the applicant when they come up. Councilmember Juniman.
Also about the parking waiver and the agreement, what happens when there's an event at the Philippine Center and their lot is full?
We will ask the applicant that question.
And I know this was sort of discussed at our last meeting, and I think that it would be more so as temporary overflow parking if needed for guests, that those wouldn't be designated spots for folks that actually live in that building.
Okay.
But again, you might want
We'll
to
talk to the
clarify
applicant
that
and-
question with them.
Sure, thank you.
So, with that, I'm almost done with this here. We'll move on. As far as they hosted their public open house and answered questions for, there were 11 residents and one business owner that attended that meeting back in May. And then staff sent notice to all the properties within 350 feet. There were 2 phone calls that were received, and both questions had questions related to parking and expressed concerns over parking on the adjacent streets. One of the callers attended the CDRB meeting and expressed that she supported the proposal, but had concerns over allowing parking on the adjacent lot and in general noise in the area. The CDRB recommended approval on June 20th. This item is before you this evening. There are some engineering and environmental comments included in the report. And staff is recommending approval and happy to answer additional questions, and I know our applicant is here as well.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. Council members, do you have any other questions for Ms. Hammond? If not, then is the applicant in the audience? Would you like to come forward and introduce yourself, please, to the council?
Mayor and City Council. Thank you very much for hosting this meeting tonight and taking up the proposition of the parking waiver and the Design Review Board recommendation tonight. My name is Kevin Walker. I'm Vice President for Housing Development at Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. We're the applicant who would own and operate Gladstone Crossing. I'm here tonight with Kate Bloom-Wise from Pope Design Group, our architects. And just by way of a brief introduction, I'd like to tell you a little more about us as an organization. So Beacon is a collaborative of about 100 congregations across faith traditions in the Twin Cities metro area, united by a vision that all have a home. In service of this vision, our congregational leaders, some of whom are in attendance tonight, support developments that respond to unmet needs in the wider community and advocate for systems and policy change that expand housing opportunity for the Twin Cities in Minnesota. We have 20-plus years experience developing affordable housing across the metro area. We work with a variety of public funders and tax credit investors to make the projects that we develop possible. We're very grateful that the City of Maplewood has chosen Beacon to redevelop this site and for all the support and guidance through the process that City staff, the Economic Development Authority, and City Council have shown the project. In terms of the design pieces, I certainly would defer to Kate. She'll be your best guide and respondent on those types of questions. If I could, I'd be happy to respond to a few of the parking-related questions that have been raised, because I know
I think we would appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The design looks very nice. It's the parking that we have the question about. Understood.
Absolutely. Thank you. So again, just an overview of what the proposition is, broadly speaking. So we have an underground garage designed to provide 54 parking spaces on site. And in addition to that, 5 at-grade parking spaces also. So taken together, the 54 plus 5, that's 59 spaces, which gets us to a 1.475 ratio on a per unit basis for this building. Our understanding, based on some of our conversations with city staff, is that this is typical for the level of parking demand that Maplewood is seeing on a number of its developments that are coming through your process. Again, we defer to city staff if I understand that correctly. We do understand that the standard expectation for a project would be that there'd be a 2-unit minimum per 2 parking spaces per unit minimum is basically the City of Maplewood's basic standard. And we meet that standard under the parking waiver proposal in front of you when you combine our underground parking and the 21 overflow parking spaces that we plan to have made available to us with the Philippines Center. The Philippines Center has agreed, in principle, to enter into a lease with us, which will be executed prior to the start of construction. We've discussed and negotiated an initial term of a 5-year lease with 7 5-year renewal periods. So that's, taking shape. And so, it's not quite signed yet, but we're all in agreement in principle. And we'd certainly understand if the city's approval of this parking waiver is in part conditioned on that arrangement, because we certainly understand that it's an extra effort that we think we would like to make, certainly to meet the city standard expectation and to provide assurance to the neighborhood and to our families that there will not be parking challenges at the site. In terms of, and city staff spoke a bit to this as well, we have looked at comparable affordable family housing developments in the East Metro, notably East Metro Place and White Bear Lake, and their car registration records have shown that the car ownership rate has ranged for families, again, of a profile similar to those we'd serve here, between 0.59 cars per unit up to 0.85 cars per unit. So if you were to translate that and project those onto this same building, which is slightly larger in size, that's the equivalent of 24 to 34 parking spaces is the known usage based on the affordability for the families in that building.
Does that also include the supportive services staff that will be there?
No, that's just looking at the family. Thank you.
Okay.
Great question. That would be just the car rental registration that the operator is seeing based on the families that are signing up and registering, like, I need that parking space kind of thing. So we do appreciate that, yes, the services staff will also need access access to parking for them to park on the site. I will say with again, between the Philippine Center lease arrangement that we're fully planning to engage, plus our on-site parking of 59 parking spaces, which is well above the 34 that the local experience suggests, we think there will be ample parking at this site. The other piece I wanted to address directly, because it was raised, is we're not necessarily going to have 24/7 staffing at the site. That will depend in part on what additional service funding resources that we can attract to the site. So that's something that we'll have to explore. So again, from an overnight parking perspective, I don't anticipate that will be a significant issue here. If we were to, realize additional funding that would support that kind of presence, it would not be like typically the services staff. That would be that full complement. So, for a building like this, we might anticipate about 3 to 4, depending on how the ultimate services funding lands, and that's an ongoing process for anyone who knows about how those pieces come together. So, again, the overnight contingent would be markedly less than, say, 3 or 4 staff members. It might be, 1 or 2 at most. So
I see some lights on up here. Councilmember Cave, you were first.
Sure.
I know all cities do not have this, but we do not allow overnight parking on our streets. So that's what we were talking about. So in my mind, unless you have that lease agreement with the Philippines Center, you can't park, like people can't overnight park on our streets. So they can in White Bear, and we don't here. So there's a little bit of, you really have to know, you really have to have your spots here, So it's really important because there is no parking on the streets.
Right. Yep. I thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the distinction. Yeah. I do think that we're confident that with 59 parking spaces on site, and based on the kind of utilization rates that we're seeing for comparable developments in this area, we're quite confident we're going to be well situated there. Thank you.
And I certainly think that whoever makes the motion can make it conditional on having a parking agreement in place with the Philippine Center. I think that would be appropriate to modify it. We have 2 other council members with questions. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for being here tonight. I recall at the Community Review Board meeting, you mentioned some stats about average numbers from your other facilities. Do you have that number by any chance in terms of parking space?
Yes, I do, as it happens.
Okay.
I mean, we had looked at 2 other suburban affordable housing properties that we operate. I just would want to distinguish that these are serving basically young adult singles rather than families. And so the statistics that I was just citing a moment ago are based on families in the East Metro, so I actually think that might be a stronger comparable. But the other examples that we had looked at, we were seeing usage rates, pretty low at like 0.2 per unit or 0.33 per unit. And again, I haven't done the additional translational math to get that over to the 40 units, but you can see, if it was like a third of 40 units, that might be like 15 or 18 spaces at the most, right? So, but again, I think the family housing kind of comps are really the best for that. Hope
Thank
that
you.
helps.
Councilmember Juniman, you have a question.
Mayor, you're talking about round-the-clock or 24/7 staffing. There is going to be on-site management?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then a comment/question about the landscaping plan, because we find that screening is really important from the rest of the neighborhood, thus the need to revise the landscaping plan to have plantings and/or fencing. It's better for everybody. It makes really good neighbors, let's put it that way.
Thank you. And Kate, did you want to speak to that to greater?
That is the plan.
Do you want to speak in the microphone, please?
Sorry. That is the plan, to add fencing and landscaping to help with that buffer between the community outdoor spaces and the neighboring property.
Thank you.
I don't see any other lights on. Council members, would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve a design review and parking waiver resolution approving a 3-story, 40-unit multifamily apartment building to be constructed at 1375 Frost Avenue East, subject to conditions of approval, including the parking agreements with the Filipino Center.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve a design review and parking waiver resolution approving a 3-story, 40-unit multifamily apartment building to be constructed at 1375 Frost Avenue East, subject to conditions of approval, including having a parking agreement with the Philippines Center. Any further discussion, council members? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
We have one other agenda item, New Way Alliance. And let's see who's on this one. Is this, Ms. Parr, this is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry, we're kind of playing with you tonight. We'll do a better job next time pointing out who's up when, so sorry about that.
I just had to move it forward, move my agenda.
Thank you. All right, Madam
Just one
Mayor.
second. Thank you all for attending. We really appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, New Way Alliance, this particular project site is at 2000 White Bear Avenue North. They are proposing opening an adult residential treatment center for an existing building which is being sold by Ramsey County. They are requesting 3 approvals this evening. One is a comprehensive plan amendment resolution, a zoning map amendment ordinance, and a conditional use permit resolution. In 2022, Ramsey County closed its care center, the Ramsey County Care Center on White Bear Avenue, as I think you're probably all familiar with. The county's agreed to a purchase agreement with New Way Alliance. New Way Alliance's proposed adult residential treatment center would have average stays of 31 days. Initially, there would be 60 clients that could take part in the program. They are looking to grow that to 120 over 4 years. At the max, the care center previously had 146 residents. The 2040 comprehensive plan currently guides the project as institutional due to Ramsey County's ownership and the previous use of the property. Given the proposed use, given what they're proposing, and the private ownership of the property, the proper land use guidance would be commercial. The site is currently zoned farm residence. Public uses are allowed in any zoning district in the city with a conditional use permit. Given the proposed use and the private ownership of the property, the proper zoning classification would be commercial office in this particular case. Our city ordinance, section 44-473 and 11-1092 requires a conditional use permit for the proposed adult residential treatment center. The facility would be staffed 24 hours a day, 365 days a year on 3 shifts, we are told by the applicant. Residents would need to leave the building during the stay for medical care and other appointments. They would need to obtain a pass to leave the building. All residents will be subject to drug and alcohol screening. We'll let the applicant speak a little bit more to the specifics of the clients as well. There are no significant alterations to either the interior or the exterior of the building that are being proposed. Primary improvements include a shower room modification, upgraded kitchen equipment, and cosmetic interior remodeling. The proposed use would meet the criteria to approve a CUP. A neighborhood meeting was held on June 15th. 4 households were represented. There were no major issues identified. We'll let the applicant speak more to the specifics of that. We sent out a public hearing notice to properties within 500 feet. We have received no comments to record. We did get a few phone calls after the fact inquiring in relation to the sign, and people were positive on those phone calls once they realized what it was going to be. Planning Commission held a public hearing for the request, and there were no speakers at that hearing either. That was on June 20th that the Planning Commission considered the applications and recommended approval. And with that, I'm here to answer any questions the applicant's here, and staff recommends approval as well.
Thank you, Ms. Parr. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Parr? Councilmember Cave.
Hi. Yes, I have a question. The property, and I don't know who can answer this, maybe Melinda too. The property was Ramsey County property. Now it's been divided and it's been purchased by Ramsey County, or from Ramsey County. So now, since we can't collect taxes on Ramsey County property, will this be a property that's in our tax base?
This is a privately owned facility, and from my understanding, we will garner taxes from this property.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Thank you. My question may be for someone else, but you mentioned that they would be drug screening. Would that be every time you enter back in to the facility?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Villavicencio, I would defer that to the applicant to speak specifically on that. I want to make sure I get that right for you.
I'll invite the applicant as soon as we're done.
Thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. And this may be a moot point, but is this really now dividing up that property that Ramsey County owned? So are there going to be, down the line, lot splits and all that stuff?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Juniman, this particular property was already part of an administrative lot split that's already been completed. And we don't anticipate any further lot splits. We do have a Ramsey County representative in attendance with us, but I will tell you that at some point, minimum lot sizes are going to dictate that they can't further subdivide. But it's a great question. Thank you for offering it.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. This actually comes back to the tax question. I remember at one of the commission meetings, I believe taxes, they have the option of being exempt, or if I remember that correctly. So if you could just get some clarification on that, that would be great. So.
Okay, would the applicant like to join us, please, and introduce yourselves? Thank you, and welcome to the council.
Thank you, and thank you for having us, Madam Mayor, council members, and staff that have helped us get this far. My name is John Miller. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer with New Way Alliance. And I'll have my colleague introduce himself as well.
Mayor, council members, thank you for having us. My name is Ken Roberts. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer for the New Way Alliance, so I can address some of the population management questions that you have.
Thank you.
We also have a couple other members of our staff here with us in the event that your questions are into their area. I may call on them. And then, as the staff mentioned, we have a representative from Ramsey County who is the seller of the property that might be able to answer any questions about the subdivision, et cetera. So to start with some of the questions, not in any particular order, as Councilmember Lee mentioned, when we're at Planning Commission, we are a nonprofit. So in the state of Minnesota, that allows us for an exemption for property tax. What we mentioned at the Planning Commission and holds true tonight is that we're willing to waive that in the event that that is deemed necessary for our approval of this use. Maybe we'll take the drug testing question next, if that's all right.
Yeah, so as mentioned in the proposal, this is a residential facility, so the clients are living there and being monitored 24/7. If they do leave the site for one of those required needs that we cannot provide on site, that does involve them being screened when they return to ensure that it's a safe and sober environment. During the course of regular care, whether they're coming or going or not, there's also regular random screening that occurs throughout the course of the week. So every resident on average during that 30-day stay is going to be tested somewhere between 4 or 6 times randomly, plus any coming or going.
Maybe just a follow-up, because I saw a furrowed brow in my comment about the taxes, and I'm not sure if that was it, but that's an application that needs to be approved. So it's not an automatic. It's a process that one can go through as a nonprofit in order to get those waived, and it may not be in their entirety. So every situation is a little bit different. But like I said at Planning Commission, again, we repeat, those are issues that we're willing to waive because we are mission-centric, and that's what our focus is.
Mr. Beatty, would you like to weigh in on that?
Madam Mayor, Council, well, I was listening with some interest, and I would certainly defer to the applicant as to their status. Tax exemption has a number of meanings. That's often applied to income tax exemption, but it also applies to real estate tax exemption. But many fewer uses are exempt from real estate taxes than from income taxes. And so most nonprofits, simply because they're nonprofits, are not exempt from real estate taxes. However, again, I would defer to the applicant if they think that they're qualified, and that's a function of state law. What they're offering, however, is not to pursue that, as I understand it. that's a significant issue. Cities always have a burden of having to continue to serve properties that, even though they're not subject to real estate taxes, and that places a burden on the community as a whole. And so if you have someone who's willing to not pursue that, even if they might be eligible, that might be a valuable thing for the city.
And is that something that we would have to add on to one of the recommended actions
I
tonight?
would, Madam Mayor, Council, I would recommend that if that's important to the council, if that's an element of your consideration, that yes, you add that.
Okay. Would we have to add it to each one of the 3 recommended actions, or? I'll let
Okay.
you take a look at them, and then we'll see if they are, put it,
CUP.
okay. Okay, we have some other questions. Thank you very much. So that's the first one? Second one? I'm trying to read it here quickly. Oh, conditional, yeah. Okay, the CUP is actually C, so we would have to add on deferral, or what would be the language for that? To waive?
Well, Madam Mayor, I guess what I would suggest is that you say that your approval is subject to them not applying for a waiver of real estate taxes.
Okay. Councilmember Cave, did you have a question too?
Yes, and probably the clinical, I have a few questions. So have you done, the new way, have they done, you're doing intensive inpatient, have you done that at any of your other facilities?
Yes. So we currently operate 5 residential facilities, serving a total of over 184 clients in those 5 different settings. So this is actually something that we've been doing since our mission inception in the mid-'60s, kind of our bread and butter, so to speak.
Okay, are you going to be doing outpatient also at the location?
Yeah, so New Way Alliance oversees 13 programs in total. I oversee all of our clinical staffing and design there. On an average day between our residential programming, which is that 180 plus, and outpatient services, we're serving typically between 11 and 1,200 clients. So it's very common for clients to enter at our residential setting, get stabilized, and then move on to a next step in the community where we provide intensive outpatient and a housing support for them as well.
Okay.
Another question?
Yep, I have a few more. And onto that is the inpatient, are you going to have security? Like, are people allowed to come in and out at will?
No.
Okay.
So it is not a locked facility, but it is monitored by staff 24/7. So there are both clinical staff and what we call paraprofessional or peer-type staff. CD technicians kind of monitor the population and the safety of the facility. There'll be a clinical director, a clinical manager, multiple counselors managing caseloads, nursing, medical, and then the CD techs. So it's a very robust monitoring situation.
Okay, and then 2 more. You have male facilities and female facilities. Which one is this going to be?
It is going to be a male facility at the outset, although we do anticipate with the potential for the larger footprint and bed expansion that it could serve both genders. We typically want to ensure that a facility that is going to work with both genders have a designated separation to ensure that there's no commingling for safety reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, especially because a lot of females, that's the reason, some of them are
So
in
the
there.
programs we operate now are gender specific, 3 male and 2 female.
And one more question, your average stay was 31 days, but someone mentioned in there could be longer. What is the length of stay they're anticipating for inpatient?
The answer is it depends, and one of the things that it depends on is individual funding profile for a client. So, some insurance may allow for a longer length of stay, some may compress that. Typically, the population we serve, which is about 95% Medicaid, state-funded clients, have latitude of up to 90 days. And so depending on what an individual client or patient's need is, that's going to dictate the length of their stay. It's very individualized. So if you need 45 days, but the mayor only needs 20, we're going to work along those lines to be sure you're getting what you need, and we're trying really to facilitate that transition back into the community and becoming a functional citizen again.
I just want to say I have looked into and I've heard from a lot of people that your programming is fantastic. And you had a lot of people come from Hazleton into your programming, and welcome you to Maplewood if it all goes through.
Well, on a personal note, I myself am a person in long-term recovery, and that journey started 18 years ago at Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation. So that's kind of central to my way of thinking and the way that we oversee our programs. And, it's about putting the client's needs first to ensure that they're going to be able to reintegrate into society.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Just back to the tax question again. I apologize for it, but can you there's how many other facility do you also have in the area here in Minnesota again?
We have about 14 programs.
14 programs.
Some leased, some owned.
Okay. Of those 14 programs, how many of those are tax exempt?
I'm going to say about 4 of those, so not the lion's share of them.
Okay. Thank you. So,
Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. This may be a moot point, but I think I need to ask so I know. If you go to where you have non-residential programs that you're offering at this site, and then you have assorted staff, is the existing parking lot sufficient?
Well, just for a point of clarification, our other programs for non-residential are not on this site. They're elsewhere.
Got it.
So this is only residential?
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
My question was about the fact that you mentioned it was not locked. Does that mean a resident could potentially sign themselves out and just get like one doctor's signature to be able to leave? Because my concern is, I've had experiences and advocates needing recovery, and temptation is always a challenge thing. And so when I think of White Bear Avenue, right where it's going to be, Purple Line's going to be coming on. It's going to be something that I think needs to be just a consideration.
Yeah, it's an excellent question and consideration. So in terms of what locked facility really means, that's about client or patient free will. And so, we certainly do not have the power legally to tell a patient, you cannot leave this facility. That decision is ultimately up to them. What we frequently see are clients exactly in the situation you're describing. They're struggling to find stability in that early recovery period, which is why it's really important to have a community setting where they're in a group of peers who are like-minded and working towards the same thing, and why we have such a robust staffing pattern to be able to intervene. So it's not uncommon for a client to have thoughts about, I want to leave, and that's when it's important for us to be able to intervene at several levels and have conversations about, why is that not a good idea? What can we do differently? How can we kind of maybe shift your motivation or change the course of what's going on right now? Is it possible that someone can sneak out in the middle of the night? Absolutely. What typically happens is we get a call later in the day, I shouldn't have done that, can I come back? The answer is always, or almost always, yes, depending on a couple of key circumstances. But the goal is to make sure that they are feeling that they are empowered in their care. And so we're going to do everything in our power to make sure they stay and work towards that recovery goal, but we can't keep them there.
Councilmember Lee.
thank you, Mayor. Just another quick question. You mentioned 4 of them were tax exempt. Are there any special circumstances or programs that has brought you guys to applying for tax exemption for those 4 locations?
No, they would have happened over time, and the applications would have happened over time, and so it was very situational. There was nothing kind of prescriptive around those, so I would call it opportunistic.
Okay, thank you much.
Okay, council members, I see no more questions. Would someone like, we have 3 recommended actions in front of us. Would someone like to make the first motion?
I motion to approve an amendment to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan's Future Lane Use Map to re-guide the project parcel located at 2000 White Bear Avenue from institutional to commercial.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve the amendment to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan's Future Lane Use Map to re-guide the project parcel located at 2000 White Bear Avenue from institutional to commercial. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Second motion?
Approve an ordinance amending the city's zoning map to rezone the property from F Farm Residence to CO Commercial Office.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve an ordinance amending the city's zoning map to rezone the property from F Farm Residence to CO Commercial Office. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. I'll make the final motion. I jotted down some language, and Mr. Beatty, I'm going to ask you to tell me whether or not this language sounds right. I'll make a motion to approve a resolution for a conditional use permit for New Way Alliance at 2000 White Bear Avenue for an adult residential treatment center, conditional on the applicant not pursuing real estate exemptions.
I would say real estate tax exemption.
Real
yes.
estate, and that's what I wrote, real estate tax exemption. Thank you. Okay.
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve a resolution for a conditional use permit for New Way Alliance at 2000 White Bear Avenue for an adult residential treatment center, conditioned on the applicant not pursuing real estate tax exemption. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. There you go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
And welcome to Maplewood. Council members, we have no award of bids. We have no further action items to discuss. I just want to ask my I want to thank you all. We got a lot of things done tonight. There's a lot of new things that are going to be happening in our city. It's really pretty exciting. And I want to ask all of you to start looking for the dead trees, because we are going to be having this discussion about the dead trees. There's a lot of dead trees out there. So anyway, with that, council members and those still present, we are adjourned. Thank you.